You have felt it. Maybe it happened this week. You raised your voice not because you wanted to, not because you planned to, and the moment the volume left your body, something in your child left the room. Not their feet, their eyes. Something behind their eyes just went quiet, and you were standing there still talking, still explaining, still trying to get through, and you could feel it, they were gone, and you did not know how to get them back. That silence is not defiance. It is not disrespect. It is something much older than either of you. And if you want to understand where it comes from, you have to go back 2,000 years, back to a civilization whose model of authority inside the family still echoes, in ways most people never recognize, in the rooms of homes today. A personal note here. I recall my older sister of 4 years going quiet when my parents confronted her about things. As a child, I was totally baffled by it. Even after all was said and done, I can remember asking her something to the effect of, "Why didn't you just tell them?" To that, my sister's answer would almost always be, "She didn't know why." Or she would say, "It wouldn't have helped anything." I don't know if you can relate, but this video is really going to help you see a totally different perspective about what is really going on inside your child's. And I believe you're going to be startled by what you learn. Let's get started. Picture the inner courtyard of a Roman household in the 1st century. Stone columns rising from a mosaic floor, worn smooth by generations of sandals. A clay oil lamp burning on a shelf in the corner. A father seated at the center of the room not because the furniture happened to be arranged that way, but because Roman law placed him there. He was called the pater familias, a Latin phrase meaning the father of the family, and his authority was not symbolic. It was written into the oldest legal code Rome ever produced, the 12 Tables, under a doctrine called patria potestas, the power of the father. Every person under that roof, wife, children, grandchildren, was legally under his hand. Children had no standing in Roman law that existed apart from his will. He could discipline them as he saw fit. He could determine when they became adults. In the earliest centuries of the Republic, the law gave him authority over their very lives. Now, picture a child in that courtyard, maybe 7 years old, maybe 10, old enough to have already learned the most important lesson that a household teaches, not a lesson about virtue or history or how to carry yourself in public. The first lesson that households teach is how to read the temperature of a room, how to watch a face for the first sign of displeasure, how to become very still and very quiet when the voice of authority rises. That child is not being defiant. That child is surviving. What that structure produced across generations of Roman households was predictable, not because the fathers were cruel, but because unchecked authority of that kind does something specific to the nervous system of a child living beneath it. It teaches them to manage threat rather than to seek connection. Roman educator Marcus Quintilian, writing in the 1st century, was already documenting what harsh authority produced in the young people he taught. He observed that punishment-based discipline did not build honesty or strength. It built what he called hypocrisy and cowardice children, who learned to appear compliant on the outside while concealing everything real about themselves on the inside. Quintilian wrote that roughly 1900 years before modern developmental psychology put the same finding in a peer-reviewed journal. That pattern did not die with Rome. It is still running in families today. It may be running in yours. Here is where the research changed everything. Neuroscience professor David Popel at New York University identified something specific about the human voice when it is raised in anger. A yell has an acoustic property. Researchers call it roughness, meaning a rapid and intense fluctuation in volume that no other sound the human ear encounters matches for intensity. And that roughness does something in the brain that is not a choice and is not a character flaw. When your child hears your voice rise, their amygdala, the brain's alarm system, the ancient structure that has kept human beings alive for hundreds of thousands of years, registers that sound as a threat signal. Not a teaching moment, not a correction, a threat. Within seconds, stress hormones flood their system. The prefrontal cortex, the region responsible for thinking, reasoning, listening, and learning, goes offline. What you see from the outside is a child who is shut down. What is happening inside is a nervous system doing precisely what it was built to do: protect the body from danger. And here is the detail that is hardest to sit with. When a child's amygdala is activated in this way, neuroimaging research brain scans taken in real-time documents that no new information can reach the memory centers of the brain. Nothing you say after the volume rises is landing in the part that learns. The behavior may stop. Freeze is one of the 3 survival responses, and a frozen child looks like a listening child, but the lesson did not reach them. It could not. The architecture of the brain at that moment physically prevented it. Think about the last time you raised your voice, and your child went quiet and you thought, finally, they are hearing me. They were not hearing you. They were surviving you. A landmark study published in the journal Child Development tracked 976 two-parent families and their children across multiple years. Researchers Ming-Tae Wang and Sarah Kenny found that harsh verbal discipline, defined as yelling, shouting, and using words intended to cause emotional discomfort as a means of control, predicted measurable increases in conduct problems and depressive symptoms in adolescents 1 year later. What stopped many parents cold was a second finding buried in the same data. Parental warmth did not cancel the damage. The two were not balancing each other out. They were operating in separate lanes. The idea that a child will absorb the correction because they know it comes from love, that idea was not supported by the evidence. What the world told parents was that volume was power. What the evidence showed was that volume was a wall. This is the moment history shows the outcome shifted. Not every ancient civilization organized family life around domination and silence. The Hebrew households documented in the Torah operated on a different model. Deuteronomy 6 instructed parents to speak the words of wisdom to their children not through formal punishment and command, but in the rhythms of daily life, when you sit in your house, when you walk by the way, when you lie down, when you rise. The transmission of values was meant to happen inside moments of connection, not moments of control. Researchers today call this narrative identity the documented finding that children who share regular, close, low-pressure conversations with their parents develop stronger resilience, a clearer sense of self, and greater emotional stability than those who receive guidance primarily through correction. Ancient Hebrew family culture was practicing what developmental science would spend decades trying to measure. The Book of Proverbs names the mechanism directly. Proverbs 15, verse 1. A gentle answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. This is not a verse about being soft. It is an observation about how the human nervous system actually responds to tone, the same mechanism that David Poeppel's neuroscience lab would measure 2,000 years later. With brain imaging equipment, rough sound produces fear. Fear produces shutdown. Gentle tones produce safety. And safety, neurological safety, the state where the threat signal is off and the thinking brain is back online, is the only condition in which a child can actually receive what you are trying to give them. A personal note here. I don't know if this struck you as hard as it did me when I let this simple but powerful wisdom sink in. As humans, most of us are literally wired to shut down, basically just shut up, kinda like mental protection. If we push back, we get more negative. I think as a child they are just hoping the yelling and the shouting is over quickly, and by not providing input, that often is what happens. Tell me your thoughts on this in the comments. Now let's continue. What does this mean for the child sitting at your kitchen table tonight, or the one in the back seat who just pushed every button you have? It means that the silence you see when your voice rises is not your child giving up on you. It is your child's brain doing its job. It is biology, not rebellion. And the path through it is not softer parenting, it is smarter biology. When you bring your voice down instead of pushing it up, you are not surrendering authority, you are removing the threat signal. The moment that signal drops, the prefrontal cortex comes back online. The thinking brain returns. That is the only moment your words can actually reach the child in front of you. 3,000 years of recorded human history, the documented patterns of civilizations that built families on fear and those that built them on connection, the peer-reviewed science of what happens in a child's brain under threat, and the ancient wisdom of Proverbs that named the mechanism before any laboratory existed to measure it, all of it points toward the same finding. The adult who regulates their own tone creates neurological safety in the child. Neurological safety creates the conditions for connection. Connection is the only channel through which real correction, real guidance, and real growth can travel. Not because a parent has to be perfect, not because the house has to be calm, but because a child whose nervous system feels safe is a child who can actually hear you. That is what history documented. That is what the research confirmed. That is what the ancient wisdom said first. Go back to that moment, the one where your voice rose and their eyes went somewhere else. That was not a parenting failure. That was a very old pattern, one that played out in Roman courtyards, in medieval great halls, in one-room schoolhouses, in kitchens across every generation of every family that ever tried to love each other without having the words for what was happening between them. Now, you have the words. The child who went quiet behind their eyes was not leaving you. Their brain was protecting them from what felt like danger, and the most important thing you can know is that the distance that created is not permanent. It is biological. And biology, unlike the past, can change. If something in this video made you see your child or yourself a little differently, that feeling is worth following. With the help of some powerful AI technology, I've created a remarkable pattern identifier that you can use for free. It's a quick quiz assessment designed to help parents uncover the parenting patterns they may have inherited. It reveals where those patterns may come from, how far back they can trace through your family history, and most importantly, how recognizing them can help you build a healthier, more positive relationship with your child. The link to the free quiz is in the description below. Right now, I have a special free pillar video that really helps you bridge the gap between you and your child, simply by understanding how and why you both react the way you do, and how many of your choices are mentally embedded into your behavior, your very belief systems. If you don't watch any other video on this channel, I urge you to take the time to click the link below in the description if closing that gap with your child is important to you. The link is in the description. See you there.